Hey guys, it's Kyla at the MJC, and today I am here to talk to you guys about the Divorce Part 2 paperwork, specifically for those of you who are filing jointly without minor children. So we'll hop into that in a minute. But before we do, just a reminder, as always, that nothing in this video is intended to be legal advice. It's a video, so I'm not able to analyze your specific situation and to evaluate whether the joint without is the right way for you and your spouse to file, whether what you and your spouse are agreeing to is something that a court will approve, or anything like that. So if you have questions in that vein, I would definitely recommend getting some legal advice. You can get brief legal advice for free here in Milwaukee County through the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. If you aren't located in Milwaukee County, then you should contact your clerk of court to find out what resources are available for pro se litigants in your county. All right, so I just want to do this brief introduction about the Divorce Part 2 joint without before we get into before we get into the actual paperwork. Because you want to make sure that you're filling out the right set of paperwork, and sometimes it can be a little confusing. So, when to use the joint without forms? You'll want to use the joint without forms if you and your spouse plan to continue forward jointly. So I guess that's the first and foremost. If you and your spouse do not agree or do not want to go forward together, then joint is probably not the right set of forms for you. But assuming that you and your spouse think you want to go forward together, there are 4 other things that you want to look at. The first thing is how you started the divorce process back in Part 1 when you filed the summons and the petition and the confidential petition addendum, or possibly just the petition and the confidential petition addendum. You want to make sure that if you are doing the joint without Part 2, that you filed the joint without minor children petition in Part 1. So if you started Part 1 separately using a summons and petition without minor children, but now want to continue jointly, you should go ahead and use the stipulated forms, and that's a different video series. And in fact, some of you may wonder why I picked this hideous color scheme, this red and black, that's a little bit tricky to read. One of the reasons I picked this is because if you worked on the Part 1 with the Milwaukee Justice Center, you would have gotten a red folder if you started jointly without. So if you worked with the Milwaukee Justice Center's in-person clinics and you did not receive a red folder, you got one that is yellow or blue or black, then this may not be the right process for you. For those of you who didn't work with us, it's just a color scheme, but make sure that you did start jointly without minors in the Part 1 to be able to do joint without in the Part 2. A few other things that you'll just want to make sure are true. You and your spouse have to agree 100% about everything. So about property division, about whether there's going to be any maintenance, and with maintenance, you also have to agree to a specific amount. So sometimes in our clinics, we'll see people who say, you know what, my spouse and I agree that there should be maintenance, but I think it should be $100 a month and my spouse thinks it should be $200. That wouldn't be joint. In our mind, that would be contested because even though you agree there should be maintenance, you disagree about the amount. So if you're looking at using the joint without forms, you'll want to make sure that you and your spouse agree about everything. A few other things that might trip you up. You want to make sure that if you're wanting to do the joint forms, that you and your spouse are both willing and able to sign forms. I know that seems a little bit ridiculous, but sometimes we'll get folks who come in and say, we agree about everything, we've talked about it, but my spouse just won't sign a financial disclosure. That's definitely annoying, and one would hope that your spouse might be more reasonable than that, but the joint without packet will require your spouse to sign a number of forms, and they're going to also have to provide financial information and look stuff up, so you'll want to make sure that both of you are willing and able to fill out and to sign forms. And last but not least, you and your spouse both need to be willing and able to attend that final divorce hearing. Some folks will say, yeah, my spouse will sign paperwork, but they're never going to come to court. That could be a problem because the court obviously wants both people there to confirm that they did sign this, that they know what's in this agreement, and that everybody agrees. So that is when to use them. And so if you look at that and you say, yeah, that's perfect. My spouse and I, we started joint without. We agree about everything. We're both willing and able to sign forms, both willing and able to go to that hearing. Then this certainly could be the right process for you. And you'll want to know what forms you need. So you will need a financial disclosure statement, and you will need one for each spouse. You can't just fill out one, you'll each have to do one. And I've included the form numbers. You can see that one is FA4139V for those of you who are searching for the forms online. If you've already received the packet from either the law library or if you've gotten it from another resource, then these form numbers you can also use to make sure you have the right form. But these, I included them more for people who are searching for the forms online because that can be an easy way to find them if you're just Googling. You'll also need the marital settlement agreement without minor children. Be careful with this because there is both a proposed marital settlement without minor children, which is not the one you want, and there's also the marital settlement with minor children, and you don't want that one either. So you want FA4151V, but you also will want to make sure that it is the marital settlement agreement without minor children. Third form you'll need is the interim financial summary. You'll only need this if one of the two parties is going to receive maintenance. If you guys are agreeing that there won't be any maintenance is like spousal support, then you don't need this form. This is only if you're going to ask the court to order maintenance. You will need the divorce annulment worksheet, and you can see that's F05080. You don't need this form if you and your spouse are filing for a legal separation, not a divorce. So if you're doing a legal separation, you don't need to do the divorce annulment worksheet. But if you and your spouse are seeking a divorce, you'll want to do that one. And then last but not least, you do need the findings of fact, conclusions of law and judgment without minor children. And again, make sure it is the without minor children form because the with looks stunningly similar. And that's FA4161VA. You also need the party's approval of the findings of fact, conclusions of law and judgment without minor children. Again, make sure you get the without one, FA4161VB. And if either of you is asking to go back to a former surname, like your maiden name or any other last name you've ever used, you'll also want the abridgment regarding surname form, FA4133V. So those are all the forms and the situations when you would use that joint without paperwork. So the next videos in this series will walk you through how to fill out all of these documents correctly. All right, well, I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope you all go out and represent yourselves well.